This is Duke University.
So I came to Duke from Massachusetts in 2000, and I found my way here mostly by accident. I grew up in a place where people talked about Duke a lot and seemed to think it was a great place, so I thought I might as well apply. And I would look into it more seriously if I got in. I remember vividly volunteering at EK Poe Elementary School as part of my focus program my freshman year. And they had just had a new set of Spanish-speaking students start in the school. And in 2000 in Durham, this was new because the immigrant Spanish-speaking families had not been settling in Durham, and so the kids were not in the school system. And they didn't have people in the school system, or at least in this elementary school, who spoke Spanish. So I ended up interpreting for most of the things going on in the school, for parent-teacher conferences, for letters home, and doing some literacy tutoring with the Spanish-speaking children in the school. I graduated from Duke in 2004 and had a Hart Fellowship to go to Bosnia and Herzegovina. And at the time, you received and accepted the Hart Fellowship without knowing where you would go. And I believe I got about 5 or 6 weeks of lead time when I knew that I would be going to Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I picked up a yellow Teach Yourself Croatian book and CD and got on the plane. And off I went to Bosnia, where I worked with a Bosnian nonprofit called Foundation Mosaic. And I did ethnographic research for them in several communities throughout Bosnia. The case study communities that I ended up focusing on were dispersed throughout the country. I stayed for a second year in what was essentially the same job for Foundation Mosaic, but continued as a locally funded employee of the organization, and continued conducting research the second year focused on our network of community organizers who came from all across the country, mostly from small rural communities like the places where we worked as a foundation. And I did research about the kinds of training that they were receiving and what their experiences were within the program and how we institutionally could improve upon that. So for the last 2 years, a little bit more, I served as a Skadden Fellow at a nonprofit called the Tahrir Justice Center, located just outside of DC. And my work there focused primarily on representing survivors of human trafficking in immigration cases. And that included working with survivors of commercial sex trafficking, primarily adolescent girls who were being trafficked by one of the gangs in the Northern Virginia area, and also working with survivors of labor trafficking, primarily individuals forced into domestic servitude situations in homes within DC. And I would represent those individuals in applying for special immigration status that would allow them to remain in the United States and not be dependent on their trafficker for status, as they often were. And now I have switched gears a bit, but still am engaged in similar work. I work for another nonprofit called the Legal Aid Society of the District of Columbia, where I am a staff attorney in the housing unit, and I represent individuals living in poverty in DC who are facing eviction, who are faced with the possibility of losing their housing voucher, and I represent them in landlord-tenant court or before the DC Housing Authority, and we work to preserve the housing and make sure that people aren't on the street. So I do work in fields that are very sad, and I know that I will have to quit when I stop feeling sad about that, because I think the second I'm so detached from my clients and the struggles that they are facing that I don't find it deeply upsetting, I have lost a great amount of my usefulness. At the same time, my clients have made it to my doorway. They're fighting, whatever it is, they're fighting for their homes, they're fighting for their safety, and they are putting one foot in front of the other, and often doing it with an incredible amount of cheerfulness and always with a great deal of strength. And so my general approach is, who am I to feel sad about this to the degree that it incapacitates me? So I think that there is a healthy amount of sadness and certainly a very healthy amount of outrage, and if I lose either one, I have to quit. But for now, I have both, and I also have the privilege of the good days, which are so very, very good.
And when you were an undergraduate, did you ever imagine yourself in this kind of career path?
No.
What were you going to do when you were an undergraduate at Duke? What did you dream of doing?
I mean, I think I dreamed of doing international development work. I didn't really know what that would look like, but I didn't quite picture myself as a lawyer. I knew that I needed to be a lawyer, but before I became a lawyer in the clinical program at my law school, I didn't understand how much I would love that and how empowering it would be to have the tools that I needed to make the systems work for my clients. And so I did a master's degree in international development, which I also loved, and was a really excellent part of my education, and I have used it since graduating, and I think I will use it again in the future. But developing the skills to be a lawyer and be able to interact with the system in ways that are impossible for individuals who are fighting poverty, who are fighting a language barrier, who might be fighting a literacy barrier. They need someone who can make the system work for them. And as a lawyer, I feel like that's one of the things that I can do.
Do you think you can maybe change the system just a little?
I hope so.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.